Welcome to the Teaching Science Podcast.
These episodes are recorded on Mondays at 4 p.m. Eastern in our virtual Teachers Lounge.
If you would like to join us on a Monday to chat about a topic related to science education, go to the calendar in our show description to get the link for the week.
You can listen to the recorded discussions as a podcast from any major podcast provider or on the Superheroes of Science YouTube channel.
Well, it's anonymous.
On this computer.
Oh, it's anonymous.
No.
Well, it is, but it isn't. I can figure out who it is. We can look at the class list. So literally, someone submitted a video. So for a class that we teach, someone submitted a video. Student submitted a video, and in this video, we didn't give them a checklist. We just said keep them 3 to 5 minutes long, and went from there. And thought, hey, these big kids, they'll do a good job.
Right.
Boy, were we wrong.
Basic assumptions.
First one, we open up what you see.
Well, first of all, the message from the teacher was, there's 2 videos. We need to use the video from the second video, but the audio from the first. They need spliced together.
Oh, goodness.
Okay. Yeah, we'll put them together.
Thought, well, yeah, we can do that.
Yeah.
Pain, but okay. Take a few minutes of my life away, but I can do that. But we open up the video. We didn't even hit play.
No.
Because the video, I'm hoping that's the one they want the audio played on and not the video. Because what you see is a student, it looks like a camera's up above them, shining down on a tabletop where they have things on the tabletop. And right there, his hand is on his crotch in the video.
Oh my God.
Like clear as day.
And that is what was submitted.
Well, the teacher didn't even look at him.
Obviously.
Or did. And too bashful to explain. This is why the videos need spliced.
Was his hand just resting there?
Yes, it was just resting. It wasn't actually. Well, I mean, I don't know. We didn't
hit play. It's time to walk away. I'm like, no, I can't do this right now. And of course, me pointing it out as soon as I pulled the video up, Sarah was no longer wanted to preview videos with me.
No.
Yeah.
I've had my own, I taught, I get to tell all these stories, but I've had my own crotch stories from high school, like the high school kids. I'm telling you, the one time the kid had his phone, they didn't even take that many tests, but this one, they had to know these things. And the kid had all the answers on his phone. He's holding it right in his crotch. Well, I saw it, so I called him out over it. And whatever. And so then every class after that, every year after, I'm like, and now I have to watch all your crotches because this kid was whatever. And all the kids. And then I had an assistant principal walk by. Of course, I always have my door open. And he walks by and he steps in. He goes, Mrs. Nern, is everything okay? And I said, I'm just telling them why I got to watch all their crotches so they aren't cheating on the video. He just slowly walked out of the classroom. And all the kids were like, please help us. No, you're mine. You're not going to cheat. Yeah.
See, that's the difference, because kindergartners don't hide it. They just reach right down in there. They don't even care who's looking. They're digging for gold sometimes.
Oh, brother.
Sometimes they're doing other things. Yeah, front, back, doesn't matter. So I gotta multiple times. I'm like, please go wash your hands. Or whatever.
That's a nice reminder.
Yeah.
That's a nice reminder.
It's a gentle reminder.
Yeah.
Oh, brother. They just know. Oh my gosh.
So I thought it would be good.
I think it needs said
for today's thing is what we should do is we're going to come up with a checklist for student videos.
Okay.
To submit
Public
videos.
Service announcement. Okay.
Yes. The first thing is, don't have your hand on your crotch in the video.
Really?
That's
publicly ever.
Check
but,
one.
Definitely not here on video. Definitely.
That is check one. And there's variations, as we talked about this, for teachers and some for comments for students. So people will have to, the teachers have to decide which ones they can put in their rubric and which ones they just need to keep in mind.
I feel like leading with the no hand on your crotch thing is setting a high bar for this list. We maybe need to work that in.
Work it in.
Work it.
Well,
I don't know that
we'll
we
start
lead
with
with
time.
this.
You know,
Okay.
6 minutes
okay.
max. And we looked up some research on it, and we found it's a couple of different studies were studied that were cited, and it looks like 6 minutes is about as far as you can keep a student's attention.
So something like 6 minutes or less, you had almost 100% engagement for the whole video.
Yeah.
But
and it said 6 to 9 minutes is the max.
Yeah.
From the different videos. Now, so I did not look. I'm assuming that was high school or college or something. I don't know.
I would think any. Really, I even
No,
think of
your kindergartners aren't going to watch 6 minutes.
No. Only if there's like cartoons or video games. And then they'll watch longer than that.
And so for teachers, we need to think they need to decide what the appropriate thing if they're having their students do video. Whether it's just a voiceover video or if it's an actual where they're recording video, they need to decide what's appropriate, but never go over 6 minutes. Have their students go over 6 minutes because that's when they lose attention spans anyway.
Yep.
And I don't think a lot of students, I know just from hearing my own children talk about presentations, they're not going to be complaining that you're going to cut them off at 6 minutes, because I think sometimes they're kind of feeling overwhelmed at I have to speak for 2 minutes. So yeah, you can definitely, you have no problem ever at home speaking for 2 minutes. So,
but I remember vaguely years ago when we had to do some oral reports and they said it had to be at least so long.
Yeah.
I always hated that because I'm like, but I've told you everything. Why do I need to waste my to get full credit? I have to go another 30 seconds, and this is dumb.
I think then you're
I think personally, I think minimums are lame.
Yeah.
Give me a rubric and tell me what all I have to have on there. And if I have it all on there in 2 minutes and 50 seconds, rather than between 3 and 5, then it shouldn't matter.
I kind of agree. I think giving them that top parameter, like no more than 6 minutes, but make sure that you've covered these things.
And I think it's important to have a rubric that says, because you want all right, so we're kind of big these days, especially into edutainment, right? It's all about education, but entertaining as possible, and you have to, especially with video.
Well, you're competing with
yes. And so I think, but for students, we have to remind them, and I think for teachers, sometimes when we're doing our videos, we need reminded: is this video meeting the learning objective of what I want?
Right.
And so we have to tell them. So for students, they need a checklist of what these are the learning things that you have to show in your video. If you're doing if you're having your students do like a voiceover or do recordings talking about composting and worms.
Right.
You have to make sure you tell us what the worm's doing. You have to make sure you use you don't say poop, but say castings. And make sure you're using our good vocabulary words and things like. So you have to tell them. Otherwise, they'll just ramble about what their uncle did last week. Well,
and I think if somebody is creating one with younger kids in mind, or even adults, I don't care, but one of my pet peeves is going to a presentation and somebody's made a PowerPoint with all words and they read the whole thing. So
yes,
and that's not going to be helpful to students, especially primary. So I don't mind the voiceover, but there better be some pictures of what you're talking about versus text. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Now labels are good, but I would say make sure you make it friendly for your audience.
Yes. Yeah, I think.
And that's, we had okay, we did. I'm thinking of I don't want to list it all because I don't want some kids to end up figuring out I'm talking about them. But we had watched a bunch of presentations and did rubrics on a bunch of presentations recently. And I know that it is, I sat there tuning out when these students were sitting there reading that PowerPoint to me.
Yeah.
And visually, we read that part of that one study that talked about multimedia. You have visual learning and you have auditory learning, and when you show a full video, you're using full capacity, and so they said
Right.
you have to break that up, and that's where you put like major things in bold and stuff like but I think major things need to be more in that's it. You know,
Mhm.
if you're I always tell them the video or the PowerPoint is not your report. That's
Right.
separate. That's not your write-up. Those are just visual cues for the people to understand what you're talking about and to help keep you guided sometimes.
Well, in a little
Yeah.
bit, I think that when you're presenting or making this video, I'm thinking videos mainly as an assessment piece, that if you have a lot of the print on it, that I think that might indicate a level of the comfort that you have with learning that material in the first place.
Right.
That
Right.
you know, if you're able to summarize it in just a couple of key bold words and then speak about it fluently in that
Right.
timeline, you've clearly demonstrated that you are understanding whatever this topic is. But that maybe you need a little more practice, or maybe you need to spend a little more time with the material before turning it in, if the best you can do is just reading this word for word.
Yeah.
And it's not even that with the video presentations that you're in front of a bunch of people doing this. I know it can still be intimidating to see yourself and hear yourself, but that's sort of the point of that, is that can you really understand what this is that you're learning and speak about it.
Something I think we could probably take from the advertising world. When we did some displays here at Purdue, all these down the original gold mine ones, the other wall displays with this faculty and groups and stuff did. They were, well, some of them aren't great and some are pretty cool. But the original one, we worked with the advertising people.
Yeah, okay.
And we met like every week. We were having meetings and stuff, and they told us, I want to say the number is 23. We were not allowed to have more than 23 words in any section on the wall.
Oh, wow.
And they said that's like the magic number. You're never allowed to go over 23 because that's where you lose your audience.
I could see that. I'm just from personal experience. If I'm going to the zoo and I look at the sign that talks about the animal, I'm hitting my highlights. I'm not going to read the whole report. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I totally get that.
And so I think that would be, I mean, it's I think that's if that's what the advertising world works. That's no more than 23 words.
Yeah.
In on a slide.
Yeah.
Choose your words wisely.
That's right.
And so I give them a limit. Don't just read that like you said. We talked about if you're on video, your actions can be distracting. We talked about that, and that's what we're talking about. Hand placement.
Where are your hands?
And stuff like that.
And for that matter, be a good group member. And if you notice this is happening, you need to speak up.
Yeah.
Can we say if you see something,
elbow or something? Yeah.
How about like, hey, let's shut this off and re-record, and you do it without your hands in your pants.
Right. Right. It needs said. It just does.
But what we find a lot of times though with these projects, students, everyone will record their own, a small segment. Then one student has some of the video software. I mean, it might be a free version or just some kind of, they'll just splice it together and turn it in, and it looks very segmented. And so I think one of the things need to be the flow. The video needs to flow.
Right.
I would recommend using the rubric as a flow, as well, the learning objectives of the rubric as a flow to make sure it flows through it. But in some of them, and here's the thing, a voice, can we hear everyone equally?
Yes.
So we need to make, whether you're doing it like right here, us or something, I'm right by the mic and I'm really loud and you're further away and you're not going to hear you.
Well,
they need it. Or if they're doing separate pieces, I might be recording mine and we just didn't hear it very well.
Yeah.
And then you record yours, that's super loud.
That's really loud.
And so we need to make sure we hear everyone equally.
And that, again, just, it's a little bit of practice. I think it's even worth it to do a practice run, just see what does the video quality look like? What does it sound like? Do we need to adjust where we're standing, how we're moving, where we are? Do a practice run before filming and that might mean waiting until 10 minutes before it's due. I know this is difficult to hear.
Understand.
You're speaking to the master procrastinator.
I
times two. Well, you're standing next to one, and
I'm
I'm
terrible about it.
hello, and the other. So
I work really good under pressure, so I have problems with projects unless I'm under pressure sometimes. But speaking of distracting the sounds and distracting actions,
Mhm.
and the audio has been said, but distracting noises.
I think a lot of people are not aware of their verbal pauses until they hear themselves for the first time. They might not realize how many times they say like. So and a big thing right now with my children and a lot of their friends, they want to begin every sentence with so this and that's it's the new like, I think. I'm not for sure.
So is the new like. I need that
is.
shirt. But yeah, we've done interviews, and it was almost listening when we're just chatting with them. We didn't really notice it, but then going through editing the video, it was almost painful. Because there was, I just said, there were so many of those filler words in there, and it was the same one, and constant, and constant, and constant, and constant, and constant. Yeah.
You don't realize that you're doing these things, like I said, and sometimes I think that also you get this transition into these verbal pauses when you're transitioning from conversational, like what we're having now, to speaking formally about knowledge, especially knowledge that people think that you know a lot about, that you're supposed to, and you take on this formal role and you almost transition, like your whole body language and everything changes. And this touches on something that we had talked about right before this, was speaking conversationally a lot of times is going to be received better by the audience because they feel that you're drawing them in and you're talking to them like real people, and something just happens in your mind when you start hearing a lecture. And maybe this even gets back to reading directly off the slides, that when you start going with this formality, if it works and you can be more conversational about the material, I think that your audience will receive it better.
I think that's something we advise them, but I don't think I'd put it on the rubric.
Okay.
Because some of them are going to be so uncomfortable just talking. Yeah. It's going to sound informal, but they might have done 4 takes, and they took the one of that they made it through without crying.
That's true.
And so I think some of them will be a little bit.
And that might even be advice more for maybe an instructor.
It's definitely advice for teachers.
Yeah.
Definitely advice for our teachers. If we're doing video and stuff, then I think that's something we need to remember. I remember once I did a video on geologic time, and I went through the entire geologic time, and I did the first few slides, and I showed it to the professor, and he's like, "Oh wow, he really loved it." And it was I spoke in a slower voice, calm, kind of monotone voice, letting people know that throughout time, many changes has occurred. And he's like, "Oh, that sounds really good." And I kind of thought, "Oh crap." And so I did the entire presentation that way, videoed it, sent it to teachers, and they're like, "Oh my God, was this really you? It didn't sound like you, because you're not usually that boring." Ooh. And it's like, yeah.
Feedback. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Everybody's always honest with me too. Painfully, but they're like, "Yeah, that was so boring." I mean, then you had the teachers like, "Well, the dialogue was somewhat monotone and kind of like
translate that. You're boring."
I'm like, "Yeah, it sucked and it's terrible." But I don't think I ever redid that. I think I still need to. And so yeah. Conversation. All right, what else we have? Attire.
Oh, yeah.
Anyone in the picture has to be school appropriate clothing. You would think that would go without being said. However, I think with so many things, it's all these days with so much video and stuff, people don't necessarily think as much about. They're a little more relaxed in what they're wearing. And so if it's some
sorry, go ahead. No, we've had some issues with parent, like in the back, make sure you let your household know that you're videotaping or you're on Zoom. Yeah, because we've had some issues with parents walking through behind kids on the Zoom, and the dads maybe were like in their underwear or, you know, something like that, and didn't realize what was going on. And then the whole kindergarten class got to, and the teacher got to see the dad in his underwear. So that's, you know, just to be mindful of that too, that your people that are in your household know that you're taping something. Make sure it's in a secure place.
Yeah, again, great feedback. Yeah, that's very good. Good, it needs said.
Yeah. No partly naked people in your
Right.
video.
Yeah, it does.
But and speaking of background, be conscious of what's in your background. Most of these programs you can do a virtual. If you need to use a virtual background, do that. I know when those one students were doing the Zoom live there a week or two ago, that some of them had virtual, and one of them said, "Yeah, it's not the prettiest back," or something like that. Like, hey, it's fine, that's fine, whatever. And one student, when he first logged on, he had these cool green lights going, and I thought, "Oh, that is so cool." But then I saw him looking at his video, and he's moving around and kind of getting everything situated, so you didn't see all that. And he flipped.
Yeah.
And I told him, I'm like, "Hey, your video is about being green. You should have kept the green lights."
Yeah.
You know?
Kind of went with it.
But I think making sure that you don't have if you're a high school kid, I don't want to see your bed.
Well, and I don't think, I think more and more that's being frowned upon anyways. Not seeing beds, not seeing bathrooms, not seeing, I mean, just a lot of
and a lot of that's privacy
yeah.
things. If you wouldn't want a stranger to see it, don't put it in there. And you don't want a stranger to see these things. I don't want you in front of your house where I see your address.
Right.
I want you to think about cyber security a little bit. If this video gets beyond, once it's out there sometimes, right? So if this video gets beyond and this gets submitted to something or whatever, you want to make sure that you're being, and I think it's never too early to start teaching them about cybersecurity, because oftentimes students get very lax and they might do it for a classroom, but then maybe they're not thinking about that. And maybe on social media, they'll post a video of them and their friends goofing off. Well, if they're posting a media of them and their friends goofing off on social media, that then other people can hack into and see, then they get a lot of personal data mining at that point. They can get their addresses. And we went to, remember a year and a half ago, that one technology conference we went to, and the cybersecurity people from the US was there talking, and they told us about where there was one where a person had went through this girl's account. He found her online, went through the account, and figured out with all the clues in the pictures, just the photos, where she lived, stalked her, and kidnapped her.
What?
You weren't in that session?
I don't think so.
This was like the federals people was there.
Wow.
And did a presentation.
Yeah,
but yeah, it scared me to death, some of the things they were talking about it. So it's, I think I turned the geotag off on all my photos that day, and I think I've turned it on since then. But I'm like, oh
yeah.
But we have to, especially with technology the way it is these days, I think we need to, even if it's just a video assignment that we don't tend to get out there, we need to keep our kids safe and get them thinking about their personal cybersecurity. So I think we still have to say this in the background, make sure you don't have anything that could help a stranger identify you.
Well, I think it's a similar principle to why you students wear safety glasses no matter what they're doing in the lab. You wear safety glasses all the time so that when it does matter, you don't even think about it. You're putting the safety glasses on. Yeah, you might not be intending for this video to get out ever past your classroom, but you're always taking these precautions so that when every time that this is just kind of like wearing a seatbelt, you always are wearing your seatbelt so that when it matters, it's there.
Yeah.
I don't think it would hurt teachers who are requiring this kind of assignment to precursor the assignment with a few days less or instruction on cybersecurity and telling, because I don't think kids realize. I mean, they just don't know. And I think
a lot of teachers don't realize.
I mean, I think they need to be. I mean, it needs to be intentional teaching and say, this is what I'm talking about. Look in the background of this particular photo. And it could also be like like fake photo of the teacher somewhere, you know what I mean? And like, how could somebody know where I was? Well, look, there's a McDonald's and there's a highway that we on, you know, so it doesn't take much for people to figure that out, you know, like, I don't know, just, I think it would be valuable and important for the kids to, because they're not going to learn it through osmosis. They have to be taught it, you know,
Yes.
I think.
And I think along with that, that's really in some of the computer science teaching standards anyways, is that awareness. So you're sort of following then some of those standards that
It
you're being
probably
asked
is.
to.
I don't remember what they all
think
are,
I've
but
read
yeah,
those. Yeah.
I could definitely see that being in there.
Mhm.
And I think it's something that, yeah, we need reminded of,
Mhm.
and our students definitely need reminded of. I know I've seen a lot of teacher videos too that probably show just a little bit too much as far as safety and security wise.
Mhm.
Because I mean, hey, there are a lot of scary, creepy people out there, and that's just the sad, hard truth of the world. And we
Mhm.
have to protect ourselves and our children
Mhm.
from those people.
Yeah.
We have to do things. So I don't think that was I like the idea, Aim, that you
Mhm.
mentioned. Do that as a precursor.
Yeah.
I think you do it as a precursor. I think it'd be really cool to do a lab, give them a bunch of photos, maybe take photos on summer break. Summer's coming up.
Mhm.
Do a bunch of photos of yourself in different places, and then give them those photos and say, okay, where did I go?
Right.
Use these clues to figure out where I went. And now think about your social media. How many clues did you leave in your social media?
Mhm.
And so, and walk through that, I think would be a powerful tool.
Mhm. Well, I think if anything, you're just helping them create that awareness, so that at least they're hearing it and they're getting it once.
Yeah.
Hopefully more than that.
It's all like that.
Mhm.
All right. We talked about being school appropriate for dress,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
That was something we wanted to make sure we talked about, because sometimes we get a little lax, especially at home. We've been hanging at home doing videos, and sometimes we kind of forget we're doing something that we need to make sure isn't. If you can't wear it to school, you can't wear it on a video for school either.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Meeting learning objectives. We talked about that. Oh, for teachers. That's what we want to talk about for
Right.
teachers. Go.
Well, I think with anything that we're developing, we want to make sure, why are we making this? We're not, and getting back to the edutainment, we're not, it's not necessarily just to entertain for 40 minutes or, hopefully not 40 minutes. That'd be a really long video. But with the learning objectives, first of all, what am I teaching? And why am I teaching it this way? And maybe I have to teach it with a video, but maybe I want to reuse a video that I've used before. And so if that's the case, then it's recycled. I want to think about, okay, I've made this video for a different purpose. Is there anything I need to change? Maybe I need to change the intro to it or something, so that it still is it's going to better meet the needs for this class I'm teaching now.
If it's obviously been recycled and it doesn't quite fit,
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to keep their attention, and they're not going to retain it.
Yeah. I think, well, they didn't care enough to make a video for me specifically for this reason. Why do I need to watch this? I'm not taking this class that it was made for.
And the last thing that we had talked about a while ago was the peer and self-assessments.
Right.
That's something with any assignment that we always encourage teachers to include.
For one thing, being able to watch yourself and critique what you're doing. How would I do this better? Could I have rehearsed this more? Could I have said this in a better way? And being able to evaluate yourself, but then also being able to evaluate your peers in a constructive way, and being able to
not just better, what did I do? What was I responsible for? Was everyone responsible for part of it? Who was responsible for what? I want that in the plan.
You can establish at the beginning, again, while you're creating that rubric. Everyone should have clear roles, because then it gets kind of messy when you get doing something like a video assignment. You'll have, just because of how it works out, you'll have one person doing certain jobs. That one person
who didn't feel as comfortable with the group, that kind of got pushed out, is in the group but not really getting to do things because they wouldn't really assign that person a role.
Right. So if it's
it could be that way too.
About this is each person's role within the group. Each group has this many people.
Yeah.
I know we it wouldn't always work out evenly. So if we had 3 people, then this is what each of the roles were. If you had a 4th person, now this person is responsible for these things. And that's going to change depending on what that assignment is. But yeah, but then knowing that, being able to evaluate and also within the group. So at the end of it, that was something else. Not only are we evaluating other groups' presentations, but we have to be able to evaluate each other within our group. So yeah, I think
these are all good suggestions.
Mhm.
What do you think, Ann?
Thumbs up.
Some of those I know it will, to translate into the younger grades, be a little harder. But I think we need to give them the cybersecurity talk, the hey, communicating with other people in the house talk for sure. And these things go for everything. I mean, that goes for just the Zoom meetings, in my opinion. If we're having a Zoom meeting, you need to make sure that you're being careful. You don't want everyone in the class to know exactly where you live or, you know, what your bedroom looks like and things like that. You can pick a virtual background if you need to, if you don't have a place that's a little more neutral. And so I think more than just presentations, I think in meetings for a lot of these things. Sound good?
Yep.
You look like you're thinking.
Oh no, I was just gonna input a little bit that even though those primary age kids may not be doing these types of projects, but they still need the opportunity to do group work, and they can maneuver those roles. You know, I mean, even as young as kindergarten, I've had them do different things, and you know, get them started early so that they know how to advocate for themselves or stick to their job or know what their job is and report out or whatever. So that's all.
And that's great.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think the more exposure they have to that early on, the easier I think it gets as they.
Definitely. Well, awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, this was a good week. I can't say that I'm not disappointed in the getting a video with a kid with his hand on his crotch, but at least we pulled something positive out of that.
You know what? That's a great thing. Make a positive out of that.
That's right. So we will catch everybody on the next one. Feel free to make appropriate comments on if you're watching it on YouTube, and if you're watching or downloading it, to like and subscribe. All right. Thanks for hanging out with us in our virtual lounge.
Please like, download, and subscribe, and share the love.
Oh, I was going to say share the love.
Find us on Facebook, Twitter,
YouTube,
and follow us everywhere.
Just not in a creeper way.